Issei felt like crying as he stood on the sidewalk, trying to hand out flyers to people. He knew he shouldn't be taking this so hard, but he just couldn't see how handing out flyers to people would help him gain a harem. Whoever heard of a harem king handing out flyers? Clearly, this boy never heard the term baby steps before. Cheer up, Era the Begami. Yeah, I'm cutting out all the failed attempts on that word. Naruto said cheerfully as he handed out another flyer to someone who smiled at him as they took it. Unlike Issei, who seemed to be having very little luck in handing out flyers, the blonde was very good at sensing people who had strong desires. It was strange. While Naruto had been good at sensing negative emotions before thanks to Kurama, he had never been able to sense people's emotional state beyond that. What was this part of being a devil? It did sound kind of like something they would be able to do. Well, whatever, he didn't care for semantics. The point was he could, and that was all that mattered to him. Easy for you to say. Issei felt his jealousy spike as the blonde managed to get another cute girl to take one of his flyers with a smile. How was he doing that? You're not having any problems handing out flyers. That's because I'm just that awesome, Naruto replied with a bright smile. Issei felt like punching his fellow reincarnated devil's face in. Anyways, the reason none of those people are taking your flyer is because they don't have any desires. At least none that could be enough for them to take a flyer from a strange kid passing them out. I'm not strange, Issei pouted a bit before an uncertain look came to his face. Am I? Naruto laughed before finding another target, a female with brown hair and doe-like eyes, and handed her a flyer. There sure were a lot of women who had strong desires. He wondered why that was. Then again, most women seem to have more wants than men. Males were easy with their desires. It usually consisted of a few things: food, money, alcohol, and sex. Guys were just uncomplicated like that. Girls, on the other hand, seemed to have a lot more things they wanted, and some of that stuff was hard to get, like expensive clothing and jewelry. Did that mean he would have to get girls some jewelry? He hoped not. His bank account didn't have enough to afford stuff like that, though he could always steal it, he supposed. Shaking his head, Naruto returned to the here and now. Anyways, the reason you're not doing so well is because you're just trying to hand out flyers willy-nilly. You need to find someone who has really strong desires, strong enough that it'll take a flyer from someone they don't know. How'd I do that? Issei was looking very awkward and confused by Naruto's words. Just how did you tell if someone had strong desires? Were they supposed to act or look different? You're a devil, aren't you? Naruto asked rhetorically. Another female passed him and he handed her a flyer with a smile. You should be able to feel out people who have strong desires. Issei frowned as he tried to feel out people with strong desires. Unfortunately, this led to him getting slapped when he ended up staring at a girl for so long that his natural propensity of perversity had him looking at her assets. This is useless. Naruto chuckled as he handed out another flyer. You know, if you keep sucking this bad, I'm going to hand out all the flyers before you hand out even one. I hate you, Issei grumbled as he glared at Naruto, who just smiled back. I bask in your hate. Chapter 4. We're all finished, Rias. Naruto was wearing a small, wide grin on his face as he vaulted into the club room without any sense of propriety and headed straight for the couch. Trailing in behind him was an exhausted-looking Issei. The young pervert was breathing hard and looked like he had ran 12 marathons without pause. The contrast between the two couldn't be more different. The blonde bundle of energy and excitement versus the brunette who looked like he just got finished running 300 kilometers in less than a week, where Issei looked about ready to fall over where he stood. Naruto was not only as fresh as a spring daisy, but was retaining that goofy grin he seemed to wear almost 24/7. It really did show the others just how different the two were. As had now become an almost customary happening, the moment the young Uzumaki was sitting down, Konako, who for some reason was always in the club room, always, crawled onto his lap so she could be pampered. Rias, the delicate right eyebrow began twitching. That was also customary. I see. She took a breath, then blew some of her bangs out of her face, causing her long, beautiful red hair to sway. That was much faster than I expected it would take. I had over 15,000 flyers in there, and you guys finished it all in a single day. What can I say? Naruto was grinning broadly as Koneko purred in his lap, his hand idly caressing her hair and ears. It was a very good thing he had been taught how to control his body functions by Jiraiya. What is this woman doing to me? We're training, Gaki. You need to learn how to resist a woman's sexual allure, or you may fall prey to seduction assassination. That would have been much more believable if you weren't writing it in that damn book of yours, you perv. Or the girl's cute little rare pressing up against him would have caused a very awkward situation to arise. Thank Kami for small miracles. I'm just that awesome like that. I'm just awesome like that. No, that's too much editing. I've done so many mistakes. Anyways, and what am I? Grunted Issei as he sat down and cast an annoyed glare at Naruto. Chopped liver? The perverted boy didn't know how anyone could constantly be that bright and cheery, but it was beginning to piss him off. No, wait, he was just pissed off that the cute little Kaneko once again chose to sit on Naruto's lap and not his. He was a good guy, wasn't he? What did the guy do? What did that guy have that he didn't? A lot of things, but Issei would be better off not knowing that. Well, Naruto's grin turned positively mischievous. I don't want to say anything, but he trailed off suggestively, leaving Issei's head to slump down and a small rain cloud to randomly appear over his head. Said cloud of rain soon began sprinkling a light drizzle onto the brown boy's head, causing his hair and shirt to get wet. Why was everyone always picking on him? Was it because he was perverted? It wasn't like he could help that. Everybody was perverted to some degree or another. So what if he was just a lot more open about his lecherous intentions than others? That just meant girls wouldn't need to worry about him having a secret agenda. What you see is what you get with him. That's not always a good thing, Issei. Here you two are. Akeno graced the pair with her beautiful smile as she sat down a cup of tea in front of each of them. Thank you, Akeno-chan. Naruto grinned at the Nadeshiko girl as she stood back up and pressed the carrying tray against her assets. Akeno smiled in return. You're welcome, Kitsune-kun. You're not going to stop that, are you? Asked Naruto. His answer was a giggle and a shake of the head from Akeno. The blonde sighed, but did not dwell on Akeno's nickname for very well. There were far worse things he could think of than to be called Kitsune-kun. At least she had gotten it right and called him a fox instead of a cat. Now that was not that there was anything wrong with cats, he just didn't like it when people nicknamed him incorrectly. Naruto eyed the tea with a speculative gleam. Then he looked down at the girl nuzzling his chest with her nose and cheek, whose head he was still petting with both hands. He went back to looking at the tea. Just how am I going to drink this? Rias nearly snorted as the blonde tried to take one of his hands away from the task of pampering Koneko, only to have the girl snatch it back and place it on her head. She then looked at him with large amber orbs, causing Naruto to cave like a wet paper towel. As the boy looked on, hopelessly trying to figure out how he could drink his tea while petting Koneko, Rias felt a sense of vindication. It served him right for getting so close to that rook anyways. They had just met all 4 days ago, and already the two were practically inseparable. He was a member of her peerage at Koneko's. Koneko didn't even have a peerage. Since you've both finished handing out flyers, let's move on to the next step. Rias decided the best thing to do would be to separate the two by starting Naruto and Issei on the next part of the new lives they would be leading as devils. It was for their own good anyways. They needed to begin forming contracts, and Koneko already had several that needed to be completed. Really, it was for the best all around. She ignored the voice that told her she just didn't like seeing Konako hogging all of Naruto's attention. It wasn't like she was jealous or anything. Nope, definitely not. Denial is not just a river in Egypt. Alright, Issei cheered, clenching his hands into fists and pumping them in excitement. I finally graduated from doing miscellaneous jobs. If your first task was handing out flyers in order to build our base of clientele, then our next one is forming contracts with the humans who have taken our flyers. Am I right? Naruto speculated. That's right, Rias said, pleased that he was so quick on the uptake. It was even enough to make her forget her minor irritation towards Konako for sitting on Naruto's lap and getting pampered by him. Akeno, if you would. Of course, Bucho. Akeno stepped into the center of the room. Naruto watched with interest as the raven-haired girl closed her eyes and furrowed her brows in concentration. The ground beneath her began to light up. A large circle about a meter or so in circumference drew itself on the ground, glowing a deep red. It was a very complete circle, with lettering of a language Naruto did not understand running alongside the outer layer. There were multiple elongated ovals that spanned across the entire construct, 6 in all, forming what looked like an atom. About a foot from the outer layer was another circle. This one kept getting cut off whenever it ran into a line from the ovals. Running along the inner edge were several symbols, and located with the proximity location of where the line would be inside of the ovals were larger versions of the same symbol. There was another oval surrounding it, and within the oval was a 12-pointed star formed when the multiple elongated ovals that spanned the entire circumference of the circle located between each point was a symbol, and in the center of the star was one final circle. Naruto seen many things in his life and thought he was not a master at the art. He had been pretty damn good at making seals after Jiraiya taught him during their 3-year training trip. Even with everything that he knew on sealing and all the seals he had seen, the Uzumaki had never seen something that looked so damn complicated. And this girl was making it like it was nothing. It was damn impressive. As Akana began to chant an unknown language, to him at least, Naruto decided to let his curiosity take over him. What exactly is that? Rias turned from where she was watching Akana to him. Right, now we're engraving your inscription inside the magical diagram. She tapped her chin for a moment, quickly thinking of the best way to elaborate further. The best way to explain it would be to call it the proof of our relationship, after which this magical diagram become the basis for all the magical powers that you'll be using. Naruto wondered if he should tell her that he wouldn't need his magical diagram thingy, since he already had his jutsu, but figured that if they went through all the trouble of doing this for him, it would be rude to refuse. Besides, while he didn't really care to learn magic, it wouldn't hurt to just have another trump card available. As the old saying went, it was always good to have an ace in the hole. Naruto, said Blonde, looked up to see Rias holding her hand out towards him. Give me your hand. The blonde nodded and stood up. Or he tried. There was a bit of problem that prevented him from actually walking over to Rias. Konako getting out from underneath Konako proved to be a bit of a struggle. It seemed the white-haired first year just did not want to get off Naruto. The girl grip on him tightened and her face seemed to bury itself deeper into his pectoral muscles. She made the cutest meowing noises that nearly had Naruto caving in right then and there. And when she looked up at him with those eyes, those large teary amber orbs, the blonde just about died of mo. For the first time since watching Konako get pampered by Naruto, Rias found something amusing in the whole situation. Eventually, after many promises of more head patting and pampering, Konako allowed the blonde to leave his spot on the couch. Albeit she had the cutest pout on her face. Even Rias was tempted to tell Naruto he could sit back down when she saw that expression that seemed to be the epitome of adorableness. not that she would give in to the temptation. Naruto was her servant, not Konoko's, and that was that. On side note, Issei ended up passing out from a nosebleed when he saw Konoko's pout. Standing next to Rias, Naruto held out his hand, watching as the red-haired beauty took it in her own and turned his palm towards the ceiling. Taking her pointer finger, the devil who gave him a second chance at life began drawing a circle similar, albeit much less complicated, to the one that Akano had made. This tool will allow you to utilize the magical diagram to teleport to your summoner, Rias explained as Naruto examined the circle. After a few moments consideration, he determined that it would be easy enough to replicate this circle on his own from now on, though he had no clue what he could use it for. Akano, are you ready? It's ready, Bucho. Akano nodded. You can start anytime. Okay. Naruto standing in the middle of the magical diagram. Doing as told, Naruto stepped into the circle. Almost immediately, he felt the power being emitted by the glowing circle. It was so similar to, but not quite the same as chakra. The best way he could describe it was it felt more pure, or maybe more dense. It almost reminded him of Kurama's awesome chakra, just not as powerful. This magic circle, what you will be using to teleport to various jobs, Rias continued explaining. The summoner will have a similar magic circle from those flyers you passed out yesterday. The light from the circle began to glow more brightly and Naruto's hair began waving as if caught in a breeze. Do you remember what to do once you get there? Make a contract with the summoner in exchange for granting their wish, Naruto recited. I got it. You don't need to worry about me, Rias. The blonde grinned as he gave the girl a thumbs up. I've got this in a bag. Rias could not help but be taken with enthusiasm. She smiled and said, very well. Have a safe trip, Naruto. Light soon engulfed his vision. The blonde had to actually close his eyes. It was so bright. When the back of his eyelids darkened, telling him it was finally safe for him to open them, he did so, and promptly frowned. He was definitely no longer in the club room, that much was for sure. But the room he had entered wasn't exactly what he had been expecting from someone summoning a devil. What had he been expecting? Basically, he had been expecting some kind of satanic looking room with a dark atmosphere and maybe an altar or two for sacrifices or something. That's the kind of satanic cultists had decorating their houses, right? What he got instead was a bright, cherry room with white walls, a creamy colored floor, and pink, flowing curtains. It was a very girly room, the kind you would expect from, a really cute girl. Aww. Turning around, Naruto found himself being met by said really cute girl, thereby confirming his suspicions about the person who such decor belonged to. The girl in question had long black hair and princess curls, electric blue eyes, and pale skin. That's actually a really cool eye color. Electric blue. She was very cute, which Naruto would freely attest to. She also didn't look much older than 11 or 12. Alright, I'm gonna need you to chill. Naruto, I didn't write this. I want to clarify. Okay, let's continue. This couldn't have been the person who summoned him, could she? Excuse me, but I was wondering if you could. The girl interrupted him by crossing her arms over her chest and adopting an adorable pout. If Naruto had motherly instincts, they would have kicked in just now. I was hoping to get Kiba-kun when I summoned the devil. Naruto's right eye twitched. So this girl really did summon him then. Dear God, they were getting younger, weren't they? Still, the girl walked over to the blonde, examining him from head to toe. Oi, what are you doing? Naruto asked as the girl moved behind him and pinched his butt. He squeaked and held both hands against his offended rear end. What was that for? The girl completed her circuit and took a position, standing in front of him. There was a large smile on her face and her cheeks were stained red. You're kinda cute too, she admitted at last. Naruto felt like he had passed some kind of test or something. He wasn't sure if that was a good thing or not. That's good to know, I think. He was actually kinda disturbed by the girl. What sort of 11-year-old pinched people on the butt? Well, whatever. Time to get down to business, he supposed. The girl had summoned him after all. So, do you have a wish you like me to grant? He trailed off, inviting her to tell him what she wanted. I want you to take my V card. Naruto stared at the girl blankly for several seconds. He then reached out with his hand and dug his pinky into his ear. When he was satisfied that all of the earwax was gone, he looked back at the girl. Sorry, could you repeat that? I don't think I heard you properly the first time. I want you to take my V card. Ah, so I wasn't hearing things, Naruto murmured. Somehow he knew this was all Kiba's fault. That girl had mentioned Kiba when he first showed up. It couldn't be anyone else's fault. Well, it could be Issei's, but even Naruto wasn't willing to place the blame with him this time. Either way, when Naruto saw Kiba again, he was a dead man. And speaking of Issei, he wondered how the other newest member of Rias period was doing. Surely, he couldn't be any worse off than Naruto was, right? Issei's situation was not much better than Naruto's. In fact, it may have been even worse. Unlike Naruto, who had enough magical energy to teleport due to his recent healed up chakra coils and being in peak physical condition, Issei's magic was practically zilch. He had absolutely no magic to speak of. This had caused him a problem when he was using the magic circle that would have summoned him to the person who was going to make a contract with. It hadn't worked. According to Rias, he just didn't have enough magic to use a summoning circle. It was just another reason to hate Naruto. Not only their cute little Kohai Koneko loved sitting on his lap and nuzzling against him, he could use summoning circles just fine. Stupid blonde bastard. With the summoning circle out of his reach for the time being, he had been forced to ride his bike to his first contract. This sucked big time because the person who had summoned him lived near 30 miles away, meaning he had to really haul ass if he wanted to get there before it was too late. Only his desire to become a harem king gave him the strength needed to carry on. Sweaty and tired, Issei finally arrived at the residence he was summoned by, to ring the doorbell before waiting for whoever had summoned him to answer the door. He didn't know what kind of person would be waiting for him on the other side, but Kiba had said that he was often summoned by beautiful girls. Hopefully, the blonde princess information was accurate. It would be totally awesome if he managed to get a hot girl as his first contract. After a few seconds of waiting, the door cracked open. Neo? Issei blinked as several times, having not expected that to be the first thing he heard from the person he was about to make a contract with. Then he sighed. Great, not only was his contractor a man, he also had something as weird as a catchphrase. The door opened further and Issei began the necessary introduction. Sorry for intruding, but I was wondering... He trailed off, his eyes widening in horror. Welcome, Neo. Standing on the other side of the door was what could only be some kind of monster. It was large, beefy, built like a brick house with muscles on its muscles and arms bigger than Issei's head, and definitely not a female. Not that it wasn't trying to at least look female, it was just doing a very horrible job of it. It was wearing its hair on twin pigtails with ribbons tied into bows. It was also wearing a Sailor Fuka uniform that showed off its disgustingly hairy legs with a pair of white wings sticking out from behind its back. Hey, leave the legs alone, man. I got kinda hairy legs. They're not that. It's like short. Yeah, it's not. The hair's not that long. Never mind. I lost where it was. Okay. We are... Yeah, I just straight up lost. Where was I? Okay. It was more and after the fact fact detail. Oh, Issei abstractly recognized the clothes as a magical girl uniform, but that wasn't something he was immediately focused on. It was more an after the fact detail. The thing for that all it could be in Issei's mind loomed over him like some kind of indomitable fortress of pink. I waited for so long, Neo. Issei, who was staring up at the thing with wide, teary eyes and snot dribbling down his nose, just barely managed to speak, to such was his fright. Your wish? I want you to turn Miro-tan into a magical girl, Neo. Eh? He really should have expected that. What with the cosplay and all, but for some reason he hadn't. In fact, he was so startled that he was knocked out of his terror of the monstrosity before him. I think you need to go to another world for that. I've been to another world, but no one has the ability to give me Miro-tan magical girl powers. The hell? This thing actually went to another world? At this point, I've been forced to take my request for my enemies, the devils, to grant my wish. Enemies? Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. This was not good. So not good. I want you to give me Miro-tan. I want you to give me Miro-tan magical girl powers. Nya! What? I'm gonna die. Yes, Naruto may not have been the luckiest guy in the world for his first contract, but at least he didn't end up with Miro-tan, who got to be thankful for the little things in life. Right. Naruto walked into his first class much earlier than he usually did, which was normally just as the bell was about to ring. Several people looked at him as he entered, their jaws dropping as the foreign kid arrived to class early for once. Everyone knew that he hated class. Hell, he always slept in class. If that didn't say all my hate, then nothing did. Really, it was a wonder Naruto had grades as good as he did. It was a good thing that no one knew he was a top class ninja. Taking a quick glance around, Naruto easily spotted his target, which may have had something to do with the fact that said target smiled and waved at him as if they were old buddies. He immediately began walking over to the person he had been hoping to see since last night. Hey, Naruto-san, Kiba greeted with a smile on his Bishonen face. How was your first? Ouch! More eyes widened as Naruto smacked Kiba in the back of the head. Several gasps were heard by the female population, which was quickly followed by several death threats for hurting their prince. Naruto ignored them. You... The blonde hissed angrily as he leaned in to whisper to the boy. There was no need to give away any knowledge that they were devils accepting contracts to fill people's wishes to everyone. You knew about Saya's wish, didn't you? That's why you gave her contract to me, isn't it, you bastard? Kiba winced as he rubbed a large bump on his head. Naruto had a surprising amount of strength for a newly minted devil. So your first contract was with Saya. When Naruto's glare intensified, Kiba winced. Did you know? What? Naruto gawked at him for a second before scowling. Of course not. What do you think? What do you take me for, Issei? What do you take me for, Issei? When Kiba just chuckled and rubbed the back of his head, Naruto sighed. I think I've been scared for life. Yeah, Saya can be a bit difficult, Kiba admitted, sitting down. After a moment or two, the spiky-headed blonde followed suit and sat down with a sigh. Just out of curiosity, what did you do to convince her to sign her contract? He then looked at the boy with a frown. She did sign the contract, right? Of course, Naruto told him. I gave it to Rias this morning. As for what I did, the blonde barely managed to withhold a shudder. I gave her a massage. That doesn't sound so bad, Kiba said. Usually, he had to do things that were a lot more vulgar in order to convince her to sign the contract. He had often wondered just how long he would be able to get away with simple kisses on the cheek and allowing her to do some minor groping before the precious girl demanded more. She kept trying to make me give her a full body massage. Kiba grimaced at Naruto's deadpan expression. As the bell for class rang, he made a reminder to give Naruto a list of possible females who may demand the same thing that Saya did. On the plus side, none of them were that young. That should at least keep him from getting hit again, right? Issei, I forbid you from ever going near the church again. The moment Naruto heard those words, as he neared the doors to the occult research club room, he knew something was up. Deciding not to just barge in there, as he won't to do, the blonde instead leaned up against the wall right next to the door so he could listen in without being too noticeable. It sounded like Issei had done something wrong. Again. To devils like us, the church is considered enemy territory, Rias continued. Naruto could almost imagine her standing behind her desk, her hands pressed flat against its surface as she looked at Issei with a combination of exasperation, concern, and disappointment. If someone like you or I were to step in the church, it would create a major incident that would cause the small momentum of relative peace between angels and devils to become strained. It's also a good way to get a light spear to the heart. Naruto smiled as he heard the worry in her voice. Even though her words may sound harsh to some, he could tell it was just because she did not want to see Issei get hurt. She really was a good person, caring for those under her as if they were a part of her family. And don't go near anyone who has any relationship with the church, especially the exorcists. They're some of the worst enemies of our kind. They've been blessed by God, so they have enough power to destroy a devil, especially a lower class one like you are right now. If a devil were to be hit by their divine power, they would be completely annihilated, with no hope of ever being reincarnated. Hearing this, Naruto raised an eyebrow. That was a useful little tidbit of information. He had heard of exorcists before, of course, but most of what he knew came from listening to people talk about these exorcism movies that seemed to be popular among horror fanatics. And those were always about evil spirits, not devils. Naruto never wanted to watch an exorcist movie ever. This is very important, do you understand? Issei did not say anything, and if he did, it was not loud enough for Naruto to hear even with his enhanced sense of hearing. Even so, he could still imagine the perverted boy shrinking in on himself, looking absolutely intimidated by Rias' stare. Naruto had to admit, she had one hell of a stare. Ara Ara, a familiar voice said in his ear. Naruto sighed as he realized his time spying was done. What are you doing, Kitsune-kun? Just waiting for Rias to finish lecturing Issei, Akano-chan, and listening on the conversation, right? Akano asked slyly. Naruto shrugged, not all bothered. She knew he was spying on them. It wasn't like what he was doing was harmful. Something like that. Since Rias was no longer lecturing at Issei, Naruto figured they were done anyways and decided to make his presence known. Barging into the room with his typical lack of subtlety, the blonde greeted the two as he always did. Yo, Rias! He grinned at the redhead, getting a smile in return. Then he looked at Issei, his grin widening into one that was decidedly vulpine. Aerodabagami. I still think I'm saying it wrong. But anyways, why do you keep calling me that? Issei looked like he was about to cry, or maybe he was about to hit Naruto. It was difficult to tell between the two. Cause you're a perv, Naruto stated in a cheery fashion. Issei looked like someone shot his puppy, while Rias and Akana began giggling at him. Don't worry though, the blonde shinobi patted the boy on the back, only to get his hand shrugged off. There's nothing wrong with being a lech. It's simply your way of life. Then why do you keep making fun of me for being a pervert? Because it's fun. Issei's eyes switched violently. Rias covered her hand to hide her giggle. At the same time, Akana coughed into hers, not just to stifle her own giggles, but to get Rias' attention. Ara, now that we've all had our fun at Issei's expense, said boy looked like someone had just struck him with lightning, which was very apt considering who was talking about him. I have order of suppression from the Archduke. Naruto watched as Rias' expression more from its amused expression to a more serious one. He raised an eyebrow, tempted to ask about what an order of suppression was, but decided not to, figuring he would get an answer soon enough. He had one idea how right he was. Naruto found himself standing alongside Akano, Konako, Kiba, Issei, and Rias later that night. The full moon was out, its moonbeams shining down upon them and casting on an eerie glow on the abandoned mansion they stood in front of. It was heard that Rias had led them to after receiving the order of suppression from the Archduke guy. Said mansion looked like it had been a grand home filled with ostentatious decoration that would be par for the course of most homes where rich, snobbish people lived. Naruto, it was run down and abandoned. Derelict building that looked like it had been the victim of several decades worth of neglect. The walls were cracked and stained. Moss and vines had overgrown much of the structure. The windows were broken, yet the inside was too dark for even Naruto's vision to pick up anything. The place was truly in great despair. Listen up, you two. Rias attracted Naruto's and Issei's attention. This will be important for you two to remember, as it's something that we will likely be called on to doing it again in the future. Naruto instantly perked up as he focused his attention on Rias. At the moment, he sounded very much like a jonin about to instruct her genin. It was actually kind of nostalgic. Rogue devils are underling devils much like yourself, except they ended up betraying their masters and went rogue. Most of them that strike out on their own act like nothing more than rabid dogs. And much like rabid dogs, they need to be put down. One of the laws of our kind is that if a rogue devil is found, they are to be destroyed with extreme prejudice. Naruto found himself nodding his head as he stored the information away. It was actually very familiar to him, as it reminded him of how shinobi villages dealt with their missing ninja. Missing ninja were not only security risks due to the simple fact that they had gone rogue, but also contained a lot of secrets within their bodies that would be used by other villagers if they fell into the wrong hands. That was why they needed not only to be killed, but their bodies destroyed entirely. That made him wonder, when rogue devils were killed, did they need to take the head back as proof of the kill? And could people earn bounties by killing them? For a second, Naruto pondered the idea of hunting rogue devils for cash. It might be a good idea to earn money. He quickly discarded the idea, however. He understood the necessity of eliminating people when they become dangerous to the safety of innocents, but he had never enjoyed killing. I take it that we're here to do that? Asked Naruto, gesturing towards the empty house. There's a rogue ninja in there, and we've been ordered to destroy it. Rias flashed him a pleased smile. Yes, this is exactly why we're here. We recently received reports that humans have gone missing around here. Normally, we wouldn't bother with rumors, since there are rumors of humans that go missing all the time, but these reports claim that the missings were all seen entering this house and never came out. That normally a sign that a rogue devil has taken up residence and is luring humans in to eat them. She paused, then added, It helps that the Archduke informed us there was a rogue devil in our territory. Sound like a nasty business, Naruto muttered while Issei paled at the knowledge there were devils who ate humans. It is, Rias admitted solemnly. The group soon made their way into the house. The stench of blood clung heavily to the air. Naruto, with his enhanced senses, nearly gagged on the scent. It was only because he had grown so used to the smell of blood during the 4th Great Ninja War that he was able to keep the bile wanting to rise in his throat down. Issei was not nearly as lucky. The boy's face was green and he looked like he might vomit at any moment. Naruto felt some sympathy for the kid. He had been just a regular person before he got caught up in all this due to the sacred gear in his arm. It really wasn't fair to him that he had to deal with this new lifestyle that he has no way to be prepared for. Among those who seemed to have trouble dealing with the scent was Konako, whose nose was crinkled in disgust and her face took a shade of green similar to Issei's. She probably had enhanced senses like Naruto, being what she was. Naruto closed distance with her and absently handed her a cloth soaked in perfume. Don't ask where he got the perfume or the cloth, just go with it. Konako smiled in thanks as she gratefully took the cloth and used it to cover her nose. Issei, Naruto, Rias said as they fully entered the mansion. The sound of their footsteps echoed loudly in the empty hallway. This will be a good chance for you to see how we devils battle. She paused for a second, then added, I should also probably take the time to explain how the servant system works and the traits you gain as one. Issei scratched the back of his head in obvious confusion. What do you mean by traits? The question was all Rias needed to begin her lesson. I've already explained the relationship between the devils, angels, and fallen angels factions. The three-way war between those three factions left all sides exhausted in both moral and strength. A large number of pure-blood devils lost their lives, and there simply weren't enough of us to make up for the losses we suffered. Because of this, we needed to find a way to build our forces back. This was how the evil peace system was put into place. Issei gave Rias a look that said he had no clue what she was talking about. Naruto didn't either, but figured she would explain and thus kept himself from reacting too overtly. Do either of you know what chess is? Isn't it like the European version of shogi? Asked Naruto, frowning a bit. Rias gave him a nod. In a manner of speaking, it's very similar to shogi, but different at the same time. By the way, chess is not European. It's Asian, well, Middle Eastern to be specific, if you didn't know that. The pieces in chess are king. It was updated to the way we play it now in Europe, but you know, it's not where it came from. The pieces in chess are king, queen, knight, rook, bishop, and pawn. Each piece has its own unique traits. The group began searching for the wayward rogue devil as Rias continued explaining how the evil peace system worked. So far, there had been no sign of the one they had been ordered to exterminate. Naruto was surprised by how clean the place was. Aside from the overturned furniture and a thick layer of dust, there was nothing to show it was being used by anyone. Given that this rogue devil was supposed to be eating humans here, he would have expected there to be blood splatters or even half-eaten corpse of two. At the very least, there should have been signs of a struggle. For the same reason, each servant undergoes training in a different ability. Although they do not have many skills, they are powerful in the ones they do know. Rias paused for a moment as she looked inside a room that had once been a sitting area. Nothing but discarded chairs and broken tables were there now. Because of this, the evil peace system has become very popular since its conception. It's actually gotten to the point where those resurrected as an evil piece are being used in competition called the rating games between nobles. Rating game? Asked Issei, a clueless look on his face. Rias placed a hand against a pair of large double doors as she answered him. This was the last place they hadn't looked. To put it simply, a rating game is essentially pitting servants resurrected under the evil peace system in a live fire exorcism similar to chess. It's actually gotten to the point where it could influence the devil's position and rank within the nobility. Naruto scratched his chin as he read between the lines of her words, which means that at some point you're going to be expected to participate in a rating game, right? I'm still not a mature devil, so it's a ways off, Rias assured Naruto as she pushed open the door. There was a loud rattle followed by the creaking of things that had long gone unused as the door opened slowly. I still can't officially enter the arena. The room beyond was pitch black. Darkness beyond darkness that no amount of enhancement would be able to pierce clung the room like a cloak. And what about unofficially? Asked Naruto, his words making Rias smile. The blonde really was quite smart. Issei groaned as he rubbed his head. I don't really understand any of this. And what piece am I anyways? Naruto perked up. He was also curious to know what piece he had been resurrected under. Naruto, Issei, you two are... What a delicious scent! A voice interrupted Rias from saying any more. Everyone present turned their attention towards the darkness of the room they were entering. With the door open, some light began creeping in, illuminating a bit of the room beyond, though not by much. It's coming, Rias murmured darkly as she glared around the room. Noticing her look, Naruto allowed a kunai to slid into his right hand and held it in a reverse grip. But it's also mixed with something foul. I think she's smelling herself, Naruto said out loud, his words causing Akano to giggle while Rias and Koneko smiled. Kiba looked somewhat amused, but was also sweat dropping at the very Naruto-ish comment. He had heard more than enough of those in class. Rogue Devil Visor, we're here to destroy you, Rias shouted into the darkness beyond. Naruto's eyes sharpened as his ears picked up a dull thud some feet away. He still couldn't see anything due to whatever had moved being covered in darkness. By judging by the rhythmic thuds that followed, whatever it was coming towards them. Something flew out of the darkness. Naruto and everyone who had combat experience, that is to say, everybody except Issei, tensed and prepared to react. They relaxed a moment later, though only slightly, when they realized what it was that had flown out of the darkness, and now lay on the ground with blood pooling around it and staining the wood paneling of the floor. Issei did not relax. If anything, he began to panic. A corpse? Once again, Naruto felt a moment of sympathy strike him as the boy turned green and began to practically hyperventilate. It was clear to him that his fellow servant was in no way prepared for this kind of lifestyle. What a nice scent. It smells so delectable that I just want to eat you up. Perhaps when I do, I'll get the chance to see if your blood is as red as your hair. Naruto's eyes snapped towards the source of the voice to find he could finally see who it was. A somewhat attractive female with messy hair, red eyes, and no shirt to cover her jiggling assets. Or at least, she would have been a moderately attractive female if it weren't for the fact that her lower half was anything but human. Naruto didn't know what kind of beast she was, but the lower portion of her body looked like an accident between a lion and some kind of arachnid. 4 large legs with paws, feet kept this thing standing and balanced. There was a prehensile tail sticking out of her hind quarters, and her entire body was covered in fur. Truly, she was an ugly mother. Not gonna say it. I'm staying monetized. Acids, naked acids. Naruto face palms as he heard Issei shout. He saw what had to be the ugliest chick in the entire world, and that's the first thing he has to say. Granted, her top half was alright. Naruto nowhere near as sexy as Rias or Akano, and she wasn't even cute enough to compete with Konoko's tight little body. But it wasn't like her upper body was bad. However, the bottom of hers just killed it. I don't know how I feel about the whole Konoko situation. I don't know. I don't know. I feel like it's weird. It wasn't even that she had way too much junk or her trunk. Just that the trunk she did have was the ugliest damn trunk he had ever laid eyes on. Well, Naruto supposed Issei wasn't known for being the most lecherous existence at school or for nothing. There was a reason he had taken to calling the boy Ero the Bagami, or the Bagami, after all. What an unsightly appearance. Rias crossed her arms under her chest. It suits you well. What a pretentious little girl. I don't know why I couldn't say that. Visor snarled out. Naruto noticed that her human hands were holding onto 2 bloody javelins. I'm going to enjoy staining your corpse with fresh blood as dark as your crimson hair. Rhea smirked and took up a gesture of a haughty pose. I guess it's true that what they say about smaller dogs having a louder bark. Visor seemed to realize that she had just been insulted. She did not take it too kindly. I'm not saying the rest. Rearing one of her javelins, I don't know why I can't say that now, back, she prepared to throw it, or maybe to close the distance and stab Rias. Naruto didn't know. She never got the chance. Yuto? Got it. Kiba darted forward, his hands held out on either side, his body becoming more than a blurry streak. Twin swords appeared within his grasp as he reached Visor, who switched targets from Rias to him. Well, perhaps I should continue our lesson from earlier, Rias said as she watched the proceedings with a single hand on the curve of her shapely hip. Kiba had just dashed in at speeds that Visor had no hope of keeping up with, his twin swords flashing and slicing off one of her arm in a spray of gore. As the rogue devil roared in agony, Rias spoke some more. As you can see, Yuto is a knight, which focuses on incredible speed. Die, insect! Visor roared as she lifted a foot to squash Kiba flat. The young swordsman did not move an inch as the left foot began descending. For at the moment Konako jumped in, her hands stretched out above her head. "Konako-chan?" Issei shouted in shock. "Don't worry, Issei," Rias said as she and the others not involved in combat yet watched as the foot tried to stomp Konato into the ground. It didn't, or rather it couldn't, as the white-haired first year managed to hold the woman's foot above her head without breaking a sweat. "Konako is a rook." As she continued speaking, the ground beneath Konako cracked as she liberally shoved the foot she had been holding above her head off, causing Visor to stumble. And a rook's strength is insane strength and defense. In retaliation for getting shoved away like a 50-pound weakling, Visor's tail lashed at Konako, struck the young girl. Said amber-eyed cutie was sent flying and only stopped when she smashed into a wall. The force behind the attack was so great that the wall actually crumbled and Konako was blown through it. "That level of attack won't work on Konako," Ria said, smiling as she twirled a strand of her hair between her fingers. Indeed, when the smoke cleared, Konako looked completely unscratched. Not even her skirt was scuffed in any way. "Time for you to blow away!" Using the incredible strength granted to her as a rook, Konako shoved herself off the ground and was blasted into the air. Her left hand clenched into a fist and held above her head. She looked like some kind of Superman or Supergirl, as she was way too cute to look like that Boy Scout with the penchant for wearing underwear over his pants. Like a rocket, the cutie little first year crashed straight into Visor's underbelly. The power behind her attack had so much force to it that much larger devils was blown off the ground and launched in a parabolic arc before descending and crashing straight through a wall. Konako clapped the dust off her hand. The bored look still on her face. "So weak." Naruto smiled as he walked up to the girl he had taken such a shine to and began rubbing her head. The blank expression turned into one of bliss as she leaned into his hand. "You really are something, Konako-chan." Konako just purred in response. Still standing where she had been since the start of the battle, Ryo's eyes twitched at the scene. "Can you two not do that here? We're still in combat, you know." "Oh, right," Naruto chuckled sheepishly as he took his hand off Konako's head, causing the first year to pout. "My bad." "Ugh," Visor moaned in pain. "How can a group so young be so strong? And now, you'll get to see the last member of my peerage after you two." Rias decided to ignore what had happened between Konako and Naruto. There was no reason to get upset over it anyways. It's not like she was jealous or anything. "Akeno?" "Of course, Bucho." Akeno was all smiles as she clapped her hands in front of her face. There was something seriously disturbing about the pleasant and beautiful smile. Issei felt a shiver crawl up his spine. "Now, I wonder how I should do this." As the smiling Akeno began to slowly walk towards the struggling to stand Visor, Rias continued her lecture. "Akeno is my queen. I'm not gonna say the rest." Ara. Smiling despite the insult, or maybe even because of it, Akeno tilted her head and looked down at the rogue devil. "You're still so energetic." "It seems. I guess that means you can withstand more punishment." A flash appeared within the room. Then, "How about I try something like this?" Zzz. Flashback to the bloopers video. Akeno raised her hand and sparks of lightning shot from her fingertips into the air, then descended upon the helpless Visor. I'm not doing the screaming voice anymore. As a queen, Akeno has all the abilities of a pawn, knight, bishop, and rook. She's the invincible vice president of our club. As Rias spoke, Naruto found himself paying extra attention to Akeno. He had noticed something off about her as she began zapping lightning at Visor. Akeno's breathing had picked up drastically. Despite an attack of that level not being anywhere near enough to tire someone like her out, there was a heavy blush staining her cheeks as well, and she was squeezing her thighs together and shuddering in ecstasy every few seconds. "Oh my." Akeno licked her lips as she stared at the charred body of Visor. The small flush on her the small flush on her cheek increasing to a brighter red. It looks like you can still continue. I wonder how long I can keep up with this. Naruto had seen that look before. It was a look he had seen a few times on particular drunk woman when he entered a brothel with Ero-Sennin together during their training trip. He would recognize that expression anywhere. Akano mainly specialized in attacking her opponents with magic. Akano, her breathing erratic as if she had just finished a 6-hour romp fest, lifted her hand again, a large smile on her flushed cheek. The way she licked her lips was as freaky as it was enticing. She's also the world's biggest sadist. I don't think I said that right. Hold up. I know what it means. Hold up. Sadist. Alright, I forgot the volume was here. Sadist. Okay. Thank you, Google guy. That was the sound of a visor being electrocuted again and again and again and again. Akano, it seemed, loved toying with her opponents. Naruto was strangely reminded of Akano as he watched the Yamato Nadeshiko work. Reminded of Anko as she watched the Yamato Nadeshiko work. God bless that crazy snake lady's sexy soul. As Issei shivered in fear from watching Akano take sexual pleasure from causing mass amounts of pain, Kiba made to reassure him. Don't worry too much. The vice president is very gentle with her allies. Zzzt. Issei shivered again as he turned around and saw Akano blasting what now looked like a well-done steak with more lightning. Naruto whistled as he walked up to the pair. Is it wrong that I find Akano to be extremely sexy right now? Staring at the blonde like he was something diseased, Issei quickly moved away, hoping he would not get infected by whatever Naruto had. Huh, Akano sighed, her body shuddering with post-orgasmic bliss as she held a hand to her cheek. It seems that still wasn't enough to kill you. Issei's sweat dropped as he looked at Visor. She might not be dead, technically, but she was most certainly not what he would call alive either. I suppose I'll let the president have the final blow. Rias walked up to the thoroughly defeated Visor, stopping just a few feet away. Her face was blank, a perfectly composed mask befitting a devil of her high standing. Do you have any last words? Kill me. Very well then, Ria smiled, her eyes sharpening and turning a tad feral. Naruto would admit it was even sexier than watching Akano get aroused by causing pain. He must be turning into some kind of masochist. Damn that Jiraiya, it seemed some of his way were sticking. Ashes to ashes and dust to dust. As Rias held up her hand, what looked like a ball of black energy erupted from her palm. With an almost absent-mindedness, she held it out towards Visor and then let it loose. The effect was impressive. The energy slammed into Visor, creating an inferno of dark flames that upon vanishing revealed the rogue devil they had been sent to kill was no more. There was nothing left, not even a drop of blood to stain the floor with. Naruto whistled. Now that was impressive, and he wasn't lying, though he had seen much more impressive battles and attacks. If he could be so bold, felt that his battles against people like Nagato, Tobi, and Madara were far more impressive. It did not mean that what he had seen here was any less incredible. He had never seen something get so thoroughly destroyed to the point where there was not even charred remains. It was over for everyone. Ria smiled at her peerage. Let's go back and have some tea. Everyone began to leave. It wasn't like there was any reason left to stay in the dump of a mansion, and with no more reason to stay, no one wanted to continue smelling all the blood that Visor had left in the house. Excuse me, Boucher. Boucher. I was thinking of Zach Boucher. If you don't know him, check him out. He makes pretty good music. Bucho. Rias turned to look at Issei. What is it? I was wondering, Issei begun. You never explained what my role was. I have to admit, I'm curious to know what mine is as well, Naruto said. Truthfully, he didn't think he would need whatever abilities he gained from his piece, but he was curious nonetheless. That's right, she eyed the two. I forgot to tell you what you two are. Issei, your role is... Issei grinned and rubbed his hands together, probably thinking it was something awesome like a knight or a rook. Pawn. He was disappointed. You mean to tell me I'm the weakest rank in all of us? Issei began crying. Large streams of tears like waterfalls came pouring out of his eyes in a mass quantities, running down his face. Strangely enough, those tears did not stain his clothes. How odd. There, Naruto patted the boy's shoulder. It'll be alright. Don't patronize me. Rias? Oh, me, Rias? Naruto said. I'm curious. What piece am I? You, Rias frowns, her countenance shifting from amused to uncertain. I don't know. What do you mean? Asked Naruto, now also frowning. How could you not know? The piece I used on you was very special. It was given to me by my older brother. She paused to gather her thoughts. It was called a mutated piece. It's basically a chess piece that was normal at one point, but mutated and became something else. It contains all the original powers of the original piece it was, but it's no longer a proper representation of that piece, and is much stronger than it was originally. I see. So you can determine what it was then? Rias shook her head. I'm afraid not. She smiled and tried to add some brevity to the situation. I guess that means we're going to discover what your piece is together. Naruto found himself smiling as well. Truthfully, he didn't care what his piece was. Naruto would not need whatever trait it gave him. All he needed were the skills he had honed to perfection back in his home world. He would be the strongest devil in the world regardless of his evil piece. That was a promise. That a boy. A request gone wrong. I think this is a side story. Rias was sitting at her desk late at night, working on some paperwork. It wasn't something she enjoyed doing, paperwork that is, but it was something that needed to get done. As the heiress to an old and powerful clan of devils and the owner of the city, it fell upon her to do it. It was just another reason she didn't like being the heiress to a powerful family. She could almost see why her brother was always trying to skip out on his paperwork. Exhaling a deep breath, Rias finished the last of the papers. Sitting down her pen, she grabbed the last sheet of paper and moved it from the unfinished section to the finished section on her desk. Her busty young redhead leaned back in her comfortable leather seat. That is a weird way of describing a head. Her arms stretching up behind her head, causing her assets to jiggle enticingly. Had Issei been there at the moment, he would have likely been blown straight through a wall by a nosebleed. Just as Rias was about to stand up and head to the room containing her bed, a bright orange light filled the room. Blinking, she looked over at the floor, where a summoning circle she recognized as belonging to Naruto appeared. A second later, said boy appeared within the single. I think they made circle, but whatever. Rias raised an eyebrow. Naruto? Her voice had him snapping his eyes over to her, a frantic look on them. Rias! Like a man who had just seen his life raft after being tossed into a raging maelstrom. Naruto rushed over to her. Rias would have leaned back as the blonde-haired Uzumaki placed his hands on her shoulders and begun shaking her back and forth. Quick, you have to hide me. You have to save me. Hide you? Save you? Rias gripped the frantic blonde's forearms to stop him from shaking her. What's going on, Naruto? And why are you shirtless? She glanced at him, then blinked. And is that glitter? It was indeed. Covering Naruto from head to toe was a mass quantity of glitter. His defined male body sparkled and shone with each movement, even as thousands of tiny sparkles flew off him from his frantic movements. The blue-eyed devil looked almost like he had been shot out at point blank with several glitter cannons. Never mind that, Naruto's panicked eyes flickered around the room as if he were expecting to be attacked any second now. You have to protect me. Protect you? Rias raised an eyebrow. From what? From them. Rias was just about to open her mouth and ask who them was, but never got the chance. At the exact moment, the door to the occult research club was busted open. Oh god, they found me! Rias blinked as several dozen girls, all covered in glitter and sparkles and glow-in-the-dark armbands, rushed into the room. There he is! Let's get him! Come back here, Naruto-kun. You'll never take me alive. Quicker than Rias could actually follow, Naruto bolted towards the window. Seconds later, the glass was shattered as the blonde jumped through the window without even bothering to open it. After him, girls! It wasn't long after Naruto had left that the girls filed out the room, leaving Rias alone. Said buxom beauty could only sit there, staring at the now broken down door and busted window with wide, blinking eyes. What just happened? Naruto stifled a yawn as he woke up after another exhausting night. His body ached in places that no amount of healing jutsu could fix, probably because they were not actually wounds but the results of a night's hard training. Cuts could be healed, bones mended, muscles restored, but the ache brought about the hard work and good old-fashioned exercise could only be healed with time. It didn't help that Naruto pushed himself quite hard last night after watching the battle between the rest of Rias' peerage and Visor. He was in good shape, but he wanted to be stronger. Strong enough that he could be able to help Rias and his new friends. That meant working back up to where he had been before getting sent to this strange world, no matter how painful such a task was. As his mind began the slow process of waking up, he absently let his hands rub the curvaceous body of the beautiful redhead in his arms. His thoughts soon turned to his training, what he was good at, what he was bad at, what he would need to improve on. Surprisingly enough, he discovered that his chakra control was exceptional, which was a nice change from his previous horrendous control. It wasn't perfect, but he wasn't going to become a medical ninja or genjutsu specialist, so perfect chakra wasn't necessary. Though he was hoping to replicate Bachon's super strength, which he remembered Sakura saying needed very precise chakra control. It would be hard, especially since Naruto did not have a clue as to how good his control needed to be. His ninjutsu was terrible. While his control over his chakra had become 1,000 times better than before, it was only due to the fact that the amount of chakra he could now use was so much smaller that he had to use what he used to do to that he had naturally better control. This meant that many of his more chakra-intensive jutsu were out of his reach. Considering almost all of his jutsu were chakra-intensive and required the reserves of an above-average jonin to even use, that left him with a very big problem. Thankfully, all was not lost. Naruto still had some of his more basic jutsu, including the ones Jiraiya had taught him when they were training. He only had a few that were B rank and below, but they would be enough for now, at least until he could begin making his own jutsu. It shouldn't be too hard for someone as awesome as him. If Sasuke had been able to make his own jutsu, then so could Naruto. Next, he would need, As his minds became fully awake and cognizant, the blonde-haired, whiskered-faced former Konoha ninja finally realized where he was, what he was doing, and that there was a very familiar person laying in his bed again. How many times does this make now? 6? 7? He was beginning to lose count. Groaning, Naruto thought about what he should do. He could slip out of the room, go take a shower, cook some breakfast, and get ready for school. Not something that brought about pleasant thoughts for the young man. Or he could stay here, where he was, and relax, which was infinitely more preferable. After all, the hot-blooded male wouldn't want to lay in bed with a drop-dead, gorgeous, and completely naked female in his arms. It seems Issei isn't the only pervert around here. However, as nice as laying in bed with his beautiful naked girl in his arms sounded, there were things he wanted to do, like finding out just why she was in bed with him again. Rias? Naruto said. The girl didn't stir. Frowning, he shook her a bit and spoke more loudly. Rias, Rias, wake up. Rias moaned slightly as she drifted back into the world of conscious thoughts. Sitting up, once again heedless of her nudity, Rias yawned widely as she received a look, and she raised a single hand to rub the sleep out of her eyes. It was almost as cute as Konako, only instead of being adorable, her action were incredibly sexual, as it was like her very being just exuded a sort of cute and innocent sexiness that was just natural part of her. She didn't even know it existed. Rias was definitely what Dry would call the girl next door type. Good morning, Rias, Naruto said softly. Rias looked down at him as she rubbed her eyes and offered a sleepy smile. Good morning, Naruto, she greeted, making Naruto smile in return. It left a few seconds later as he remembered he was supposed to be a bit disgruntled. Or was he? Waking up with a beautiful woman was certainly not something he should be complaining about, after all. Still, it was a bit annoying that to wake up with someone else when you know they had not been there the night before. Care to tell me why you're in my bed again? Asked Naruto with a single raised eyebrow. Rias blinked several times as she registered his words before smiling. I had trouble sleeping on my own, Rias admitted, causing Naruto to look at her oddly. Normally it's fine so long as I have something to snuggle with, like one of my stuffed toys, but for some reasons I just couldn't get a good night's sleep. I suppose you could say I was feeling restless. Naruto struggled as he tried to work through what he was saying. It wasn't what she was saying. It wasn't that he didn't understand her words so much as he just could not picture Rias having any stuffed toys. She didn't seem the type. Okay, so maybe that wasn't entirely true. She was very grabby in her sleep, as he could attest to. He could easily picture her holding onto something large, overstuffed, human-sized animal or something as she slept. On a side note, it was a very cute image. Naruto dispelled those thoughts with a shake of his head as Rias began to speak up more. Then, I remember how easy it was to sleep next to you. You were so warm and cozy, like being next to a fire without the possibility of getting burned. I just couldn't help myself. Naruto sighed as he rubbed his eyes with a tired expression. What to do. It wasn't that it necessarily bothered him that he slept with him, that she slept with him. You know what, it's fine. He would admit that it felt nice to wake up next to a warm body. It hadn't happened enough back in the elemental nations. At the same time, as much as he liked Rias, he still didn't know her that well, and he wasn't the kind of guy to allow intimacy to develop without knowing he and the girl in question really did love each other. That one time at the brothel during his training trip did not count. It would never count. Curse that Jiraiya. Does it bother you that much? Naruto made the mistake of looking at Rias when she asked him that question. The blonde had often felt that Konako was the very definition of Mo, and that was true, but Rias had something special that Konako did not. The first thing he noticed was the way her hair fell down her face. It gave the gorgeous red head a strange aura, a combination of innocence and mystery that enchants all who laid eyes on her. Her bangs fell about her face, hovering around and over her eyes. Bro, this dude is good with being descriptive. Like, congrats to him. Which were the next two objects on the list of things he noticed? He had been enchanted by those eyes that first day they met, loving their unique color. Right now, those eyes had narrowed into a look that was somehow both remorseful and seductive. It may have had something to do with the sad frown on those beautiful pink lips, which was the third thing he noticed. Or maybe it just had something to do with her assets. She was still naked after all. No, Naruto waved his hands in front of his face, as if attempting to ward off the look she was giving him. He may have some experience when it came to naked females thanks to Jiraiya, but he had next to none when it came to situations like this. Zero tolerance meant his will and fortitude quickly eroded. It's not a bother at all. I like it very much, in fact. Really? Before he knew it, Rias was leaning in, her eyes growing large and sparkling with joy. It was almost as bad as the other look. Yes, really. Naruto leaned backwards, hoping against hope that maybe space would lessen the effects of her technique. It didn't. It did not. But that was mostly because he was lying down and couldn't actually lean back. I mean, it felt really nice, you know, holding you in my arms and all. He flushed suddenly. It was one thing to sleep with a naked girl. It was quite another to explain your feelings about something like this through words. It feels really nice. Rhea smiled, widened. It wasn't quite the cat that ate the cannery look, but it did make Naruto feel like he was missing something. Rhea Squirmy was still smiling when she entered the student council room. She was feeling inordinately pleased with herself, and why shouldn't she? She had finally discovered a way to make Uzumaki Naruto frustrated. She had been a little disconcerted by how unaffected he was by her nudity. Despite not having many or any of the modesty taboos that humans do, she was well aware of the effects her body had on the male and some of the female population. That this boy seemed completely unaffected by it bothered her. The fact. That wasn't to say he didn't like what he saw. She had clearly seen the apprehension he had for her body, appreciation he had for her body during those times she woke up in his bed. And since she always woke up in his bed these days, well, you get the picture. Several times she caught his eyes wandering over the swells of her assets or tracing the curves of her hips with lingering glances. But his gaze was not like those of Issei or other men. It was different. There was no other way to describe it. When he looked at her, it felt different than when other men looked at her. There was no real lust in his gaze, no desire to do something more to her than simply looking, or it was just so well hidden that she couldn't see it. Either way, it felt like nothing more than simple admiration of her beauty. It was both flattering and at the same time disappointing. That was why she was so elated to have finally found something that affected him. While Naruto was unaffected by her nudity, at least as unaffected as a teenage male with a raging hormones can be, he could not remain unaffected by the feelings of a woman. It seemed his entire personality, or a very good chunk of it, was built towards ensuring the happiness of others. He simply didn't like to see other people sad. She didn't really know if it was because she was a girl or not, though she felt it certainly helped her chances. Regardless of how unaffected he was by her nudity, Naruto was still male. All men were predisposed towards acting out in some way when dealing with a member of the opposite sex, whether that was acting like a chauvinistic pig or a chivalrous knight was dependent upon the person's personality. Naruto was definitely the latter of the two. Grimmery-san, a voice greeted her as she entered the room. Rias did not even bother looking around the clubroom as she waltzed up to the desk where a girl around her age with black hair styled in a short bob cat and violent eyes sat. She sat herself down on the empty chair in front of the desk and greeted her rival with a smile. Sona-san. Sona Seatree, a third year like her and the school president of the student council, looked at her over red-rimmed glasses. It is very rare for you to visit me like this, Sona said as she used a minor application of magic to get rid of the paperwork that was stacked neatly on her desk. A snap of her fingers and a chessboard appeared within a magic circle that had Sona's family crest, the white side facing her and the black side facing Rias. She looked over at the other members of the student council and spoke again. Please leave us. One of the members, the only male student among them, looked like he was about to protest, but a sharp glance from Sona had him leaving as well, albeit grudgingly. Turning her attention back to Rias and the chessboard, Sona made her first move. Whatever you want to talk to me about must be very important if you have to come to see me so early in the day. Rias studied the move Sona made as she carefully decided her own. I don't know if it's really important, or at least not vitally important. I am simply here to satisfy my own curiosity, she said, finally making her own move by taking a knight and moving it in the position where it could take Sona's rook if she wanted to. I see, Sona narrowed her eyes thoughtfully. After several seconds, she moved her bishop. You're here about Uzumaki Naruto, correct? You know me too well, Rias sighed. Sona had always been good at reading her like a book. It didn't help that she tended to wear her heart on her sleeve unless required not to. Yes, I am curious about one of the newest member of my peerage. I'm surprised you don't know much about him already, Sona frowned. You members of Gremory clan are well known for being affectionate towards your servants. I know plenty about him, Rias argued as he watched Sona make her move, grimacing as one of her rooks was taken. In return, she took Sona's knight. Naruto-kun is very forthcoming when it comes to himself. I've seen even asked him about some things I probably shouldn't have, yet he didn't get angry at all and still answered my questions honestly. Sona studied her friend's expression. Rias wondered if the guilt she still felt at bringing up such terrible memories for her newest servant was visible on her face. Probably. Sounds like someone has had a troubled past. I really can't say, Rias' shoulders slumped. Naruto's story is his to tell, and I don't want to break the incredible amount of trust he's shown me by saying anything. A smart move, Sona admitted as she moved another one of her pieces. Rias frowned when she saw that her friend and rival was trying to trap her king. If he's so forthcoming about himself, then why do you not ask him what you need to know? Because I've come to the belief that the answer to the question I want doesn't lie within Naruto-kun himself, was the immediate answer as Rias decided to use her queen to destroy the piece that had been about to put her king in check. I suspect he would not even know the answer to the question I want to ask. And that question is? Naruto is on my brother's scholarship program. Rias frowned as Sona moved her queen and placed her in check. She placed the hand upon her king, but quickly discarded the idea to use it and instead moved her rook to shield it from the queen. Now, if Sona tried to take her rook, she would have her rival's queen. I want to know why. And what makes you think I know the answer? You have information on everybody who comes to this school, Rias said without hesitation. Surely you would know something about Naruto. Not as much as you might think, Sona sighed as she found her queen taken. She had extended it a bit too far into Rias' territory, an oversight on her part. Though, I do have a bit of information that you might find interesting. When Naruto was admitted to someone told me how to pronounce it, but I forgot, so I'm just gonna call it Koa Academy. The person who filled his paperwork was none other than Grafia-sama, my brother's wife. Rias nearly choked on air as she heard this. But why? That makes no sense. What makes him so special? That, I don't know, Sona said as she studied the board before smiling. I only know what I just told you. She moved her bishop into position and leaned back in her seat. Checkmate. It would have normally galled her to lose to her rival, friend or not, but Rias was no longer paying attention to the chess match between them. Her mind was occupied by something far more important than chess. A little over 1 month ago, Naruto had joined Koa Academy under her brother's scholarship program. At the same time, her brother had given her the most unique mutated piece she had ever seen, and only required that she traded it for a single pawn. She got a mutated pawn out of the deal as well, which was how she was able to resurrect Issei so easily. Now, she just found out that the person who had filed Naruto's paperwork to be omitted was none other than her brother's wife. Just who was Uzumaki Naruto? Naruto, Koneko, you need to wake up. A hand on his shoulder began shaking Naruto awake. Opening his eyes, the blonde warily glanced around to ascertain his current location. He was in the clubroom, laying on the couch where he had elected to get some shut-eye before heading out to do some training. A glance at the person the hand belonged to showed a worried-looking Kiba. Kiba? Naruto yawned as he stretched himself out on the sofa. Laying on top of him, curled up like a cat, the little Koneko began staring. "What's up? Something wrong?" "Issei's in trouble," Kiba explained in a rush. "Hamejimba-senpai is already preparing a magic circle to transport us to his location. The only ones not ready are you two." That was all Naruto needed to know. Getting up on the couch, Naruto helped Koneko to her feet and quickly brushed her hair down as she rubbed her sleepy eyes. A glance towards the other end of the room showed a silhouetted figure standing by the window. Even with her features obscured by the setting sun, he could see her concern and frustration. "We're ready," Naruto told Kiba. "Let's go." Stepping into the magic circle with Koneko and the others, Naruto was transported to the place where Issei was apparently in danger. He was really beginning to wonder about the boy. The first thing that hit their senses was the copper-heavy stench of blood. It was a rank, cloying scent that burned the nostril with its poignant odor. The smell was thick enough that anyone not accustomed to it would have gagged. Naruto ignored the corpse that had been nailed to the wall and pulled out a cloth and a bottle of perfume, liberally spraying the scented liquid on the cloth before handing it to Koneko. Much like during the rogue devil hunt, she was the one who seemed to be the most affected by the horrid stench caused by the bucket loads of blood that had been splashed across the walls like a mad painter throwing paint on a canvas. Koneko sent him a thankful look as she took the cloth and held it to her nose. Naruto absently patted her head on the head as he took in the scene before him. Issei was standing, barely, his legs wobbling and looking like they were able to collapse at any moment. It was not hard to notice why. The tiny bullet hole that was leaking blood from his right thigh didn't look very pleasant, even if it was a small wound. "Hiro-kun, we're here to help." Ara, you looked injured." "Priest." Issei looked at the group in shock. "Everyone's here." Akano smiled a lovely, terror-inspiring smile as she placed her hand on her cheek. "Just leave everything to us." Her eyes strayed to the person who had likely been the cause of Issei's injuries. "Now, I wonder how I shall cook this one." Issei shivered and sweat dropped at the same time. "Greetings." I'm not saying that. Yelled at a young man with short white hair, red eyes, and a disturbing slasher smile. Judging from the clerical clothing he was wearing, it was easy to deduce that he was likely a member of the church. The psychotic-looking teen, who looked like he could give Joker a run for his money in the insanity department, rushed towards them with a strange beam of light in his hand. Kiba darted forward, meeting with the white-haired male in a clash of blades. They met in the center, their swords clashing, making a strange zapping noise as light blades met steel. A power struggle began between the two, each trying to push the other off. It soon became clear that the pair was evenly matched in the physical strength department. Neither seemed capable of overpowering the other. The two jumped away when it was clear neither would win this contest. Kiba had the advantage of strength with his reverse handling of his sword, but the white-haired boy could put more force into his push. "You know, it's very rude to attack someone without even introducing yourself. You won't earn any points with the ladies that way." The white-haired boy looked like a retarded dog as he let his tongue hang out and his posture slumped. "Do I have to introduce myself again? I'd rather not give another introduction to more, not saying that, devils who are just going to die soon. Why don't you ask the devils who is nearly dead on his feet, if he survives it long enough, that is." As the two began trading blows again, Akano blinked as she noticed someone was missing. "Ara? Where's Kitsune-kun?" "Over there." Koneko pointed over to where Naruto was. Akano felt a bead of sweat trickle down the side of her face as she saw the blonde teen crouching in front of a petrified-looking little nun. "Hey," Naruto greeted with a wide grin, seemingly not at all bothered by the sound of combat going on between Kiba and the straight white-haired dude. "My name is Uzumaki Naruto. What's yours?" The nun, a cute-looking girl around their age with blonde hair and green eyes, shrunk into herself a bit. "My name is... it's Asia." Asio Argento. Asia, huh? Naruto blinked, then tilted his head. Kind of a weird name, but whatever. He held a hand out to the timid girl, who squeaked at the action. It's nice to meet you, Asia. Years of instinctual politeness kicked in, and Asia found herself giving her fellow blonde a handshake. Nice to meet you too. Oi, oi! The white-haired priest descended from Kiba and glared at Naruto when he saw the blonde chatting up the nun. The heck do you think you're doing? I'm not saying that, devil. Huh? You can't just go ignoring me like that. The priest ran towards Naruto, prepared to run him through with his blade. Ase, who was in front of the blonde male, saw what was happening and opened her mouth to scream out a warning. Before anything else could happen, a large burst of dark energy forced the priest to jump back, lest he be destroyed. The energy ended up hitting the wall on the other side of the room, then going straight through the wall like it wasn't even there, before blasting into several more walls after that. I dislike it when people hurt my cute little servants, Rias said as she finally decided to get herself involved in the battle now that she had a clear shot of her enemy. All eyes followed her as she moved to stand by Issei, her hands still outstretched towards the priest and her eyes narrowed in anger, especially some with such a vulgar mouth. Then again, I wouldn't expect any less from a stray exorcist. The only set of eyes not really following Rias or the happenings in the room of at the moment were Naruto's, who finally realized that Asuka was exposing herself. He took one look at her assets, which were free from their confines, both her bra and nun outfit having been ripped some time before their arrival, and hummed thoughtfully. We need to do something about that, he murmured, taking off his school jacket, wrapping it around the girl's shoulder, and closing the front. Asuka just looked at him, surprised. Well, it's not a perfect solution, but it'll do for now. Thank you, Asuka said automatically. Naruto gave her a foxy grin. Don't mention it. Anything for such a cute little Imuto-chan. No. If it's an Asuka ship, I will personally change this fanfiction. I will never do an Asuka ship. Asuka flushed at the new title she had just been given by this strange but nice boy she had just met a few seconds ago. Yeah, I've got a potty mouth. The priest was ignoring Naruto and Asuka now that Rias was actually willing to fight him. She was the bigger threat anyways, it seemed. I'm so sorry about that. The church didn't like that I was so vulgar, or that I kept killing humans, so I was kicked out. But you know what I say? Screw the Vatican. So long as I get to continue killing you, not saying that devils, nothing else matters. Your kind are the most difficult type of exorcist to deal with, the kind of exorcist that takes pleasure in killing us. Screw you! I don't need to be told off by a devil. I'm just trying to live my life like everyone else. I'm not a position where pests like you can talk down to me. Even devils have rules. Huh, why the heck should an exorcist care about the rules of someone beneath them? Then why don't you just disappear? Rias exclaimed coldly before she fired another blast of dark energy at the priest. He jumped away just in time to avoid being vaporized. The energy sailed past him before blowing another hole into the wall, causing him to whistle at the destruction caused. Nice, I like those passionate eyes. You're the best. I can feel your urge of wanting to kill me. Is this love? No, I think it's killing intent. Superb, this is great. I love the feeling of intending to kill and getting intended to kill. Despite the amount of bravado he had, it was probably clear to the priest that he was outnumbered and outgunned. Even someone as insane as him had to recognize how bad this situation was. Even without Rias' energy blast trying to tear him apart, facing off against 4 devils of unknown strength was not a good idea. Bucho, Akane warned, her voice screaming over the explosions caused by the energy blast Rias was unleashing. We're going to need to finish this quickly. I can sense several fallen angels coming to this location. I see. Then it looks like I need to hurry this up. Taking aim once more, Rias began to rapidly throw ball after ball of black, demonic energy at the priest. With the amount of explosion that began taking place and the number of holes appearing in the wall, it was a wonder the house was still standing. It got to the point where even the exorcist realized the situation was hopeless. Suddenly, the idea of sticking around to fight didn't seem so appealing anymore. He quickly reached into his cloak and retrieved a vial of clear liquid, which he threw at Rias. The vial would have hit, but before it could, a blonde figure stood in the way, his left hand swinging at the vial to knock it aside. Rias' eyes widened. "No, wait, Naruto, don't!" She was too late. The moment her blonde servant hit the vial, it shattered from the force. Whatever was inside flew out, splattering all over his face and upper body. Naruto hissed. A pained grimace set on his face as the liquid began to hiss and steam, eating away at the exposed part of his skin. "Naruto!" Rias shouted, startled and concerned as her servant took a blow meant for her, and one that contained one of the greatest weaknesses of devil kind, especially those of a lower class. I'm fine," Naruto murmured, wincing as he felt the strange liquid burning the left side of his face. It felt like his skin was being eaten away by acid. Rias snarled as she saw the damage the water was doing to Naruto's body. She turned to the exorcist one more to give him a lesson in pain that he wouldn't soon forget, only to find the priest and the little nun that had been with him were gone. Hope you guys enjoyed that video. If you did, hit that like button. The next part will be coming out tomorrow. Until then, bye.